Family and fellow soldiers, I'm the professor, and this is the moment of truth. Harvey Weinstein has been convicted of rape for the second time, this time in Los Angeles. His lawyers did a good job at trying to get the charges all dismissed, knock him out, throw out whatever they could, but when one of your accusers is Governor Gavin Newsom's wife, well, stick a fork in him, boys, he's done. Now, when the woman who's sleeping with the highest elected official in the state is one of your accusers, that puts you in a tight spot. Seems the old saying is true after all, powerful men make powerful enemies, but that's a two-edged sword. Not only are powerful men powerful enemies, but powerful men tend to have powerful enemies. So that saying is both a warning to the powerless and powerful alike. I guess Harvey Weinstein wasn't paying much attention. Poor Harvey. He was already serving major time in New York, and they yanked him out of his cell just so they could throw more years on top of that. Boy, he must have ticked off a lot of people over the decades. Now, the white media went into phony hysterics over Bill Cosby, a man who doesn't run any studios, a man who doesn't have the power to hire or fire anyone, a man who didn't have the power to greenlight a TV show or a movie, a man who didn't wreck anyone's career and didn't coerce any women into having sex with him. Meanwhile, they just don't have the same energy for Harvey Weinstein, a man who Hollywood has known for the longest time as a sexual predator. Where are the black feminists at? The same ones who had all that phony outrage for Bill Cosby are nowhere to be seen now. There's two reasons for that. They understand now that whatever temporary boost to their careers that they thought they were going to get aren't going to materialize. See, the black feminists are inventions of white power. They know better than to call themselves speaking against a white studio executive or celebrity. After all, these are the people who have the power to give you a job. And hey, their white feminist pals wouldn't like that. They know better than to speak out of turn. They're just clout chasing. That's why they're all teeth whenever they're around their masters, their buddies like Rose McGowan. They'll gladly be the attack dogs for white power and demonize any black man accused of, well, nothing, and then they'll lie through their teeth and claim that they're only doing it because, well, they've got to protect black women and girls because nobody else is. And then when you point out that black actresses like Lupita Nyong'o have accused Harvey Weinstein of menacing them, people like Tarana Burke get combative and say, well, why is it my job to go after white men? No one's telling you to go after white men. They're telling you to go after the people who are menacing black women, whoever they may be. So there you have it. They'll protect black women and girls unless it's a white media executive who they want a book deal or a TV show from, in which case, well, black women and girls, you're on your own. Kind of like how these black feminists haven't been very vocal about the murder of a Tatiana Jefferson. Yeah, when you're trying to sell the swirler intersectional lifestyle, well, sticking up for a Tatiana Jefferson against Aaron Dean ain't on the menu. You don't see any of them making spectacles of themselves like they did during the Cosby trial. And speaking of people who have been real quiet, lest we forget, it was people like Agent Duvernay who not so long ago talked about how they loved Harvey Weinstein. Well, back when he was in a position to hand her a directing gig. Yep, back then she admitted she had heard all the stories, but she was still a fan. As she saw it, Harvey was still the man, and she wanted to be on his good side. But when he lost his power, lost his standing in the entertainment world, and couldn't offer her anything, she began singing a different tune. But there's somebody else who isn't singing at all, and that's Kamau Bell. He was so proud of himself after Paramount's subsidiary Showtime gave him some money and airtime to put out his fiction fantasy show masquerading as a so-called documentary about Bill Cosby. And just for the record, Paramount is the same company that owns CBS too, which was run by the infamous sexual predator Les Moonves, or as I like to call him, Molester Moonves. Notice how Kamau Bell didn't make a documentary about Moonves? And notice how nobody else in the white media is doing so either? In the early weeks of Me Too, all we heard about were white media executives and white media personalities like Matt Lauer and Charlie Rose. These white media figures were being disgraced, forced to resign under a cloud of shame. They were the face of sexual predation because they're the ones who have the power to coerce women into doing what they want in the entertainment business. But then these same white media executives, seeing themselves getting forced out of their jobs, watching as they were losing their standing and prestige, they hatched a plan and began to use the very media outlets that they control to manufacture a fake distraction and put all the attention on black men instead and get it off of themselves. You could tell there was a program at work because it was happening across the board. So the white media bought and paid for these smear campaigns against black targets. Kamau Bell was part of that. A black face for the white media to hide behind. But nobody was fooled by him, and he got lit up for the part that he played in all this. He's been traumatized by how badly he got drugged. He's blocked people like me. So since Kamau Bell was so eager to tell everyone that he just wanted to do an expose about men with power and how they abuse it, then he ought to be waiting to do a follow-up about Harvey Weinstein. Except he doesn't want to. He'll do whatever his white media paymasters tell him to do. He'll be the front man for whatever nonsense they want him to promote. And since they're not offering any money to be the front man to talk about Harvey Weinstein or Les Moonves, Kamau Bell ain't saying nothing about it. Kamau Bell knows exactly why the white media gave him that money to go after Bill Cosby. He also knows that by distracting attention off of the Harvey Weinsteins and others, he was helping to give these sexual predators a whole bunch of room so they could slither away and escape any ramifications for their actions. Well, we're not letting this fall down the memory hole, because Harvey Weinstein wasn't the only white media figure to be taking it on the chin in the last few days. Former Oscar-winning screenwriter and disgraced rapist Paul Haggis had his name stripped off of a park that was named after him in his own hometown. Now that's just sad. His own hometown, the place that he was born and grew up in, are so ashamed of him that they've removed his name from a park that they had named after him. And he was also stripped of an honorary degree that he'd been given by Fanshawe College, who have also canceled the scholarship that they had in his honor. But I'll bet you haven't heard about any of this, have you? An Oscar-winning screenwriter who, by the way, among many other people, he's written screenplays for Clint Eastwood. And this guy gets his name stripped from a park and a scholarship, and he loses his honorary degree, but the white media pretends like it didn't happen because Paul Haggis isn't black. It doesn't fit the narrative. When Bill Cosby was going through that, it was wall-to-wall trash like Judd Apatow saying he needs to lose even more. They couldn't wait to pile on, repeat whatever misfortune that they had manufactured against him from the rooftops. Dave Chappelle had his old school's Performing Arts Center come under fire for planning to name it after him, but Paul Haggis gets found liable for rape and has a park that was named after him taken out of his name, and apparently the white media could care less about that. And keep in mind, Paul Haggis is not facing any criminal charges. Oh, there were some charges against him in Italy. He was detained briefly, but they let him go because genetic immunity from law. But in the United States, there's no criminal charges pending. There's nobody who's looking at this civil case and saying, last time this happened to Bill Cosby, there was a civil case against Cosby and we used that as a springboard to put some criminal charges on him. Let's do that to Paul Haggis. They're not trying to do that. They're not trying to tee him up for a prison sentence. It's a matter of there's been a civil case and, well, that's pretty much as far as it goes. No rampant white media speculation, nobody running up in Clint Eastwood's face saying, hey, your buddy who wrote that movie $1 Million Baby for you. What do you think about him? Should he be in prison? They're not doing that. They're not trying to get everybody to denounce him because they never do unless the person that they're trying to smear is black. Then all of a sudden they need to run up in the face of everybody that person ever knew and say, well, do you defend him? Do you stand by him? I'm pretty sure Bill Cosby never had a park named after himself. The fact that that even happened is just wild and newsworthy in and of itself, but the white media is in the business of protecting white power, and that protection begins with protecting white power's image. They must push the lie that black people, and black men in specific, are the worst of the worst. Whatever is bad in the society, black people are doing it the most, and doing it worse than anyone else. That way, when one of Clint Eastwood's screenwriter pals gets found liable for rape in a court of law, the white media can ignore that and try to see if there's some black man they can fabricate a headline against. And if they can't find one, then they'll just go ahead and ignore the Paul Haggises and the Harvey Weinsteins and try to pretend like it didn't happen. These are one-and-done stories because the white media needs them to be. This is not news, it's racist propaganda. When they try to demonize us, make them pay a price for it. Make sure whenever the white media or some chump online calls themselves aiming the dirty end of the stick at black people, you remind them of all these sexual predators and disgraced rapists that they refuse to talk about. Because they won't mention them. And we all know why. Good day, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors. Eye for an Eye, Rowlett Churchwell, Finian Ramcharan, Montrez Braxton, and Jean-Philippe Raval. Salute to them and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.